Monday, September 3 edition of the NFL Spotlight Show. I am your host, Ari Meirov. We are one day away from the start of the 2025 NFL regular season. Yesterday was a Tuesday. We had our special Spotlight Guest of the Week. We were joined by Carolina Panthers offensive coordinator Brad Idzik. What a great story. What a great career so far. One of the youngest offensive coordinators in football and his journey and his path. It's a really, really cool one. Spoke to him for over 40 minutes. A lot of great feedback so far from that interview. Go check it out. Go back one episode if you have not done so yet. As for today, we are going to be talking about a bunch of coaches. And I do this every single year. I've done it for the last 4 or 5 years. In article form, it is the top coaches to watch under 40 years old in the NFL, names you should know, maybe some of them you do recognize, some of them you won't recognize. For the first time ever, we're going to do it in video form here today before the season officially kicks off. Let me bring in my good friend Ben Allen. Ben, what is going on? It's great to see you. I'm really excited about this.
Yeah, I'm really excited too. I know this is something that you've been talking about with me for a while now. Just the anticipation getting this list together. I mean, literally hundreds of people you have to go through. This isn't like a small task of being able to assess who these guys are and really where their career trajectory goes. Like, you know, this isn't one of the fun like 30 under 30s where somebody just pays you to be on the list. This is real stuff. This is you digging through it. This is the phone calls you make. I know you're working the phone lines. You're getting the real information on these guys. So I'm going to wind you up here and just let you run. Who are these guys that we need to be keeping an eye on who could be the future head coaches of our favorite teams and offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators, special teams coordinators, all that jazz.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to go through all of it here, and I'll just preface this. Like, I've done this last couple of years. It's cool to look back at some of them and see the names that you had originally who have come up. But like last year, we had Udinski on the list when he was still with the Vikings. Now here he is as an offensive coordinator with the Jaguars. Years ago, I had Dave Canales on that list. Now he's a Panthers head coach. Like, it's cool to see this stuff actually come to fruition, and that's really the goal of this. So we're going to start off the bigger names. We'll start off the offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators. The biggest trend that we have seen around the NFL over the last, 10 years is the positions that they're getting younger. Like, teams are okay hiring guys who are younger. So I'll start with some of the guys who have been on this show. You've heard their stories if you watch NFL Spotlight. Udinski, Jaguars OC, year one, working with Trevor Lawrence, with Liam Cohen. He's a name to watch. Declan Doyle, the Bears offensive coordinator, he was on the show about a month ago. He's working very closely with Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams. His opportunity as an offensive coordinator, he's on this list. And then Brad Idzik, the Panthers offensive coordinator, was on the show yesterday. He's on this list, just 33 years old. And we know this when it comes to NFL owners, NFL team presidents. What they look for in future head coaches, it's become the thing for the last, 10 years, 9 years. It's the young offensive mind, good energy, brilliant guy who could think outside the box. These guys kind of fall into that category. But I'm not done there. We have Joe Brady, the Bills offensive coordinator, who I think should have gotten a job this past cycle. He was a bit selective. We see the work that he's doing there with Josh Allen, running that team for Sean McDermott, the offense for Sean McDermott. James Cook had an unbelievable year. And last year was really the year of, we're moving on from the whole Stephon Diggs. We have a number one receiver. We're going to be very selective and have a bunch of guys who are going to contribute to this team. That was a big part of it, was Joe Brady, who is 35 years old. We saw the success that he had at LSU. He was with the Saints at one point. He was with the Panthers in the Matt Rule thing, which was not the greatest place for him. But now he is back here with the Buffalo Bills. He is a future head coach in the NFL. Dan Pitcher in Cincinnati, the offensive coordinator there. He's 38 years old. He's another name who is a fast riser, and his story is a really cool one. This is somebody who is now the offensive coordinator for Zach Taylor. He took over for Brian Callahan, who went on to become the head coach in Tennessee. And people might not realize this, but he was on the staff with Marvin Lewis. So this was not necessarily a guy who Zach hired, but he has made a really fast rise here in the NFL before getting promoted to the job in Cincinnati. He interviewed in New Orleans. He interviewed in Tampa Bay. He's had interviews a number of places, but he wanted to stay in Cincinnati, got that job. We saw the year that they had last year of Joe Burrow, Triple Crown winner Jamar Chase. We saw Chase Brown come out and have a breakout season. Dan Pitcher is a name to watch here in the future. The last offensive coordinator I'll mention here, Josh Grizzard in Tampa Bay, another guy who was promoted this offseason, going to work with Baker Mayfield, who's had, I think, close to 10 offensive coordinators in his career already. But we've seen Tampa Bay become like the spot for future head coaches. First was Dave Canales, then was Liam Cohen last year. Josh Grizzard, who is 35 years old, got promoted this offseason. We'll have that shot this season in Tampa Bay. From all the reports, from all the public comments out there, Baker Mayfield loves him. He's all in with him. For the most part, the terminology of the offense is not changing so much. But of course, Josh is going to add his own taste to the offense. And this offense should be an electric one once again. Let's go over to the defensive side of defensive coordinators here before I get to some position coaches. Kelvin Sheppard, the new Lions defensive coordinator, 37 years old, was promoted this offseason after Aaron Glenn went over to the New York Jets to become the head coach. I remember seeing Kelvin Sheppard at the Senior Bowl when the Lions staff coached one of the teams. It was one of the first Senior Bowls that I went to, and this guy is a ball of energy, and the players there, all these college players who were on that in the Senior Bowl, they were like glued to him. He was just so great around the players. All the players loved him, and he was basically the energy guy there. Like Dan Campbell was also there. There's all these other coaches who were there, but everybody was really, really close to Kelvin Sheppard. And from what I understand, like obviously Dan knew that Aaron Glenn was going to leave at some point to become a head coach. I think he knew on his staff he has Kelvin Sheppard, and he's okay with that transition. Deep down, he felt he was ready for that. The bigger question was always going to be who's going to replace Ben Johnson, but he knew if Aaron was going to leave, Kelvin is a guy, and I think Kelvin is somebody who, assuming this defense will have success, which I think they will, he is somebody who could become a future NFL head coach as well. Zach Orr, the Ravens defensive coordinator, he was on my list last year, first-year defensive coordinator last season. Former All-Pro linebacker with the Baltimore Ravens, had a promising career, which was cut short due to a very, very serious neck and spine condition. It was a devastating injury for him. He was in the prime of his career, but he went from being an undrafted guy, an All-Pro player, to saying, no, you know what? I don't want to quit football. I want to be involved in football. And he ended up saying, I'm going to go out there and try to become a coach. And he has had a quick rise in the NFL, just 33 years old, replaced Mike Macdonald. Mike Macdonald last year, the Seahawks head coach, he said Zach Orr is a future head coach in this league. And as the year went on last year, the Ravens defense got better and better and better. And I think they will be one of the top units in the NFL this year, especially that secondary, which is absolutely loaded. A couple more defensive coordinators here. Chris Shula, the Rams defensive coordinator, entering year number 2. He's the grandson of the great Don Shula. He was teammates with Sean McVay back in college. He joined Sean McVay's staff all the way back in 2017 when Shaun was hired as the Rams head coach, and he has climbed up the coaching ladder on his own, really step by step, during the entire time with the Rams. Started as an assistant linebackers coach, then became the outside linebackers coach, then became the linebackers coach, then became a pass game coordinator, a defensive backs coach, then a pass rush coordinator. He has done every step you could imagine when it comes to the defensive side of the ball. Finally became the defensive coordinator last year, and this has been a youth movement when it comes to the Rams defense with Aaron Donald no longer there. They have had a smooth transition doing that with all the great players. Jared Verse, Braden Fitz, Byron Young, Kobe Turner, you name it. They have a lot of really, really good players. Some of these guys who are not necessarily household names, but Chris Shula is a very, very important name when it comes to the Rams staff. And as we all know, when it comes to the Rams and Sean McVay, a lot of teams like poaching from that staff. Two more defensive coordinators I'll mention, sticking here in the NFC West. Nick Rallis, just 32 years old, the Cardinals defensive coordinator. This is somebody who, when he became the defensive coordinator in Arizona, he was still 29 years old. There are players on that team who were older than him when he got hired. Calais Campbell is 38 years old, I believe, right now. He's 6 years older than the defensive coordinator, which is quite the stat. But this is a stud, a rising star in the NFL. And the Cardinals defense has gotten better year over year under Gannon and Rallis. And Rallis is a big-time energy guy. The players resonate with him. And I think the Cardinals defense, which will get started this week, Sunday, week 1, could be a sneaky good one this year with all the players they had, especially their on the back end, which we'll talk about here later in the show with a different coach. One more name that I want to mention here. I was surprised that he's under 40, honestly, because he's been around the NFL for a while. Shane Bowen, the Giants defensive coordinator. This is somebody who I'm very, very curious to see what he's able to do this year. He had so much success with Tennessee, with Mike Vrabel. There was that one year where they were the number one seed. The playoff game, I'll never forget, versus the Bengals, which they lost that game to Joe Burrow the year Cincinnati made the playoffs, made the Super Bowl, I should say. But that defense haunted Joe Burrow that day. It was Ryan Tannehill's 4 or 5 interceptions in the game, which was the reason they lost. But Shane Bowen's defense has been really good over the years. And this year, I think with that defensive line, with Abdul Carter and Dexter Lawrence and Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau, and of course, adding guys like Javon Holland and Paulson Adebo on the back end, there are pieces on this defense for the Giants defense to be really, really good. And Shane Bowen, just 38 years old, under 40, is a name to watch over there with the New York Giants. That right there is 11 names so far. I'm going to do 2 special teams coordinators here on the show today. Number 1 is Jeremy Springer, 36 years old. He is the Patriots special teams coordinator. He was hired last year on Gerard Mayo's staff, came over from Sean McVay's staff with the Rams, where he was the assistant special teams coordinator. This is somebody who the Patriots last year were a mess. Offensively, defensively, the only real functional group of that team might have been special teams, to the point where Mike Vrabel made sweeping changes this year, but he kept Jeremy Springer on the staff at the special teams coordinator. Special teams guys don't get enough credit around the NFL. They have their hands involved in every aspect of the operation, offense, defense, every level of the team from player 1 to 53. They have their hands in it. Jeremy Springer is one. Frank Ross, the Houston Texans special teams coordinator, 38 years old. As somebody told me, he is basically, remember Robert Saleh in San Francisco, his first go around there, the energy that he had. Frank Ross is that times 10. I mean, we saw it a little bit on the sideline last year. He is awesome. The players love him. And the Texans special teams have been among the very best in the NFL every single year that he has been there in Houston. Again, these guys, it's very rare for special teams coordinators to become head coaches in the NFL. But these guys so far, those 2 in particular, under 40, are guys that I am watching here. I'll give an honorable mention as well to somebody who's been on my list the last couple of years. Chris Horton, the Ravens special teams coordinator, has been on the list the last 3 straight years. Baltimore has had one of the very best special teams in the NFL. John Harbaugh himself was a former special teams coordinator turned head coach. He puts a lot on Chris Horton, who he trusts to run that special teams there in Baltimore. All right, on to the position coaches here, and I'll start off with a name that I have been keeping an eye on for a number of years. He's been on my list ever since he transitioned from player to coach. Davis Webb, the quarterbacks coach in Denver, former backup quarterback around the NFL, Giants, Jets, Bills. He had always wanted to become a coach in the NFL, retired young, and his story is a cool one because, first of all, he's not a rocket ship. I'll say it right now. When he becomes a head coach, I hope you guys heard it from me first. But his rise is remarkable. He transitioned from that backup role, and the way he ended up in Denver is a story I love the most. When Shaun got hired in Denver, they traded for him. He was ready to fill out his staff, and he was looking for a quarterbacks coach, and he was just going through the process. And he was like, you know what? I'll interview a bunch of guys, but I'll probably hire one of these guys that I know from New Orleans. He interviews Davis Webb as part of the process, and Davis Webb blows him away. It was the most impressive interview that he did throughout the entire process, regardless of what position it was. And he hired Davis Webb on the spot. And ever since then, Davis Webb has had a vital role in Denver. Of course, we saw what Bo Nix did last year. He's a very, very big part of that, of course, being the quarterbacks coach. There were a number of teams who were trying to hire Davis Webb this offseason. He got a bump in promotion to also becoming the passing game coordinator in his title. But this is somebody who, in this preseason, the first preseason game versus Arizona, Sean Payton gave him play calling responsibilities. He was awesome at it. He was so good at it that Evan Ingram, who used to play with him, were teammates with the Giants. Evan was not supposed to play in the game. And Evan was like, wait, Davis is calling plays. I'm playing in this game. He got a big 40-yard catch in that first possession. Like, players love Davis. He resonates with everybody. Obviously has been in the locker room in the past. Davis Webb is the first position coach that we're going to name over here, and keep his name in mind because he is going to become a real future guy in the NFL, likely an offensive coordinator very soon, and do not rule out head coach in the next 5 years. There's a bunch of other former backup quarterbacks around the NFL who are starting their coaching careers in middle of their coaching careers in their first few years as in their coaching careers. I'll name all of them right now because the names are probably very familiar to you, and I've heard some great things about them. I'll start off with Alex Tanney, another former Giants quarterback. He is right now the Colts passing game coordinator, working very closely with Daniel Jones. Shaun Mannion, former backup quarterback around the NFL. He is the Packers quarterbacks coach right now, going into his first year in that position. Works with Jordan Love, but also works very closely with Malik Willis. Worked with him very closely last year when he was an offensive assistant. Malik Willis last year around this time was starting games for the Packers, and he was awesome. So Shaun Mannion gets some credit for that. Scott Tolzien is the Saints quarterbacks coach. We had one of the Saints reporters, Nick Underhill, on the show here a few weeks ago talking about the quarterback battle. He gave us a very funny stat, which is kind of true, but from all the Saints quarterbacks on the roster right now, Scott Tolzien is the only one who's actually won an NFL game. So pretty funny thing there. But Scott, he is 37 years old. He is a guy who's working very closely with Spencer Rattler, with Tyler Shuck. They'll find out this year if those guys are the future or not. David Blough, the former Lions quarterback, started a game at Thanksgiving once upon a time. He's just 30 years old, assistant quarterbacks coach right now in Washington, has worked closely with Jaden Daniels, has been there with Marcus Mariota in that quarterback room. So he's another name to watch as well. He's very serious about his coaching career, and he's a name that I think at this time next year could be a quarterbacks coach, an official quarterbacks coach running the entire room, and eventually an offensive coordinator in the NFL as well. And then Thad Lewis has been the quarterbacks coach in Tampa Bay the last couple of years. Is in that room with Baker Mayfield, was in that room with Tom Brady. He is now going into his third year as the official quarterbacks coach, has been in Tampa Bay for the last 5+ years. He is a name that has been working his way up in the coaching ranks. Tampa Bay is one of the very better ones when it comes to developing coaches, and Thad Lewis has been developing in Tampa Bay the last several years. I'm going to jump around over here. I'm going to go to defense right now. We'll come back to offense here in a few minutes. Shaun Dion Hamilton in Detroit. He is the linebackers coach. He is now replacing the Kelvin Sheppard, who's now the defensive coordinator. Shaun Dion, former NFL linebacker for Washington, played for Detroit, multiple-time national champion with the Ohio State Buckeyes. He has been making his coaching career in Detroit. He started off as a defensive assistant, then became the assistant linebackers coach with Kelvin Sheppard. Now he's taking over as the linebackers coach down there in Detroit, working with Derek Barnes and Alex Anzalone and Jack Campbell. We know how important the linebackers are there in Detroit. He's going to be running that group this year, another one of those former players. And then we've named a bunch of backup players who are now becoming coaches. I love this story because this is a guy who was an all-pro, Pro Bowler, one of the very best pass rushers we've had in the NFL, one of the most underrated pass rushers we had in the league. Ryan Kerrigan, remember him? Over 95 career sacks in Washington, was awesome with them as a player. He is very serious about a coaching career. He's 37 years old. He's right now the assistant linebackers coach and pass rush specialist in Washington. He's all in on this coaching career. Like, he really wants to make something out of it. He's been there for the last number of years, started off on Ron Rivera's staff, has now been with Dan Quinn. This is entering year number 2 of Dan Quinn. And of course, he is somebody who, from my understanding, has had a number of teams reaching out to him this past offseason about joining their group. He wants to stay in Washington. He made his entire NFL career in Washington, besides for 1 year in Philadelphia, which was didn't really do much there. But his career has been in Washington as a player. He wants his career in coaching to be at least in the beginning in Washington, and he is slowly but surely making his coaching career come together right now. All right, back to the offense here, and the next group we're going to have, I think most of these names, the average fan probably has never heard of them, but these guys, as described to me, studs, stars, future guys you're going to hear about in the next couple of years. We're going to start with the Ravens run game coordinator, Travis Switzer. This is a guy who interviewed for the Seattle Seahawks offensive coordinator position this past offseason. He's a former offensive lineman himself. And when it comes to the Baltimore Ravens and their run game, which is one of the very best in the NFL, He's the guy who draws it all up and creates it throughout the course of the week. He is somebody who John Harbaugh has a lot of trust in. We saw what Derrick Henry did last year. The numbers talk for themselves. In 2024, the Ravens running backs as a whole led the NFL in yards per rush, rushes of 20-plus yards. They also were top 5 in rushing yards, scrimmage yards, total touchdowns, and rushing touchdowns. They did it all. Travis Switzer is the name to keep an eye on in Baltimore. Again, he got that interview this offseason in Seattle for an offensive coordinator position. It is coming very, very soon for him. Next up, Steve Shimko. He is the Dallas Cowboys quarterbacks coach, longtime confidant of Brian Schottenheimer, has been around him in a number of stops. He was with him in Seattle. He was with him dating back all the way in college at Georgia. He is just 35 years old. Dak Prescott, the quarterback, has spoken very highly about him publicly, said he is one of the more important voices in that offense when it comes to game planning every single week. He was the offensive coordinator for Jeff Hafley at Boston College a couple of years ago. And of course, Hafley is now the defensive coordinator in Green Bay. We spoke about Hafley on the show when the Michael Parsons trade happened. I think Hafley is a name who could become a head coach in the NFL. If he ever does, would not surprise me if he brings Steve along with him. But Dallas Cowboys, their success on offense this year, obviously Shotty is a big part of it. Steve is a part of it as well when it comes to that. We're going to go over here up next to Connor Senger. He is entering his 4th year with the Arizona Cardinals, and he has been promoted every single year over the last 3 years. He is now their pass game specialist. He works very closely with Kyler Murray. He's coached at the Senior Bowl. He's coached at the Shrine Bowl. And from my understanding, there have been teams knocking down Arizona's door over the last couple of offseasons, including this past offseason, trying to get him to come. And Arizona knows that. They realize that. That is why they keep on promoting him. Last year, Kyler played all 17 games. Part of his success it goes to Connor Senger, who again is a name to watch over here in the future. Another one over here, going back to Detroit, we mentioned a couple of Detroit Lions coaches here. Tyler Roll, he is their Lions tight ends coach. This is his 1st year, hire this offseason. And think about it for a second. Dan Campbell, former tight ends coach. Ben Johnson, former tight ends coach. Chandler Engstrand, who's now the Jets OC, former tight ends coach. That is a vital position on Detroit staff. And there's a really cool story here that I heard about Tyler Roll. He actually met Dan Campbell about 3-4 years ago at a pro day. And both of them, they're just really authentic guys. They really hit it off, spoke for about 40-45 minutes. And after the conversation was over, Dan was like, hey, let me get your number. We'll keep in touch. But Tyler was like, this guy's the head coach, Detroit Lions. He's never going to, get back to me. That was a good conversation. We'll move on. They actually, a few days later, Dan gives him a call, says, hey, man, really enjoyed that conversation. Let's definitely stay connected. I would love to have you on my staff one of these days. Right now, I'm really full, but let's definitely keep in touch. And they have stayed in touch these last couple of years. But, of course, Detroit staff, it was kind of intact the last couple of years. And this offseason was finally the offseason when they got raided. Glenn is out. Ben Johnson is out. We saw all these other guys get promoted with Ben and with Aaron in Detroit and New York. And as a result, Tyler Roll now has a role here with the Detroit Lions as a tight ends coach, which again is a vital position there for Dan Campbell in Detroit. Going back to the defensive side of here, we're jumping around. Christian Parker, he has been on my list the last 3 or 4 years. He is the Eagles passing game coordinator, defensive backs coach right now. He began his coaching career at age 21. That's right. You heard that right. 21 years old. He was serving as a defensive backs coach at Virginia State back then. His NFL journey started back in 2019 with the Packers. He spent 3 years as a DBs coach for Denver with Vic Fangio. Of course, he's back with now in Philadelphia, but this is somebody who has been described as an exceptional communicator. He is regarded as a future defensive coordinator in the NFL. Worked with Vic, worked with Ejiro Evero, worked with Mike Elko. He has a wealth of knowledge, still very, very young around this game. He was also a former wide receiver in college, so his ability to describe as a DB's coach now, his life as a receiver kind of has both angles there. Really, really smart guy, really, really important guy there in Philadelphia. And of course, we saw the success last year that a guy like Cooper DeJean and Kenyon Mitchell had in Philadelphia. Christian Parker deserves some credit for that as well. Rams passing game coordinator Nathan Shieldhouse is the next name on this list. He was a busy and hot candidate this offseason for people who follow the coaching circuit. The Jaguars interviewed him for their OC position. The Bucs interviewed him for their OC position. He had other opportunities at different teams at other positions as well. Ultimately, he decided to return to Sean McVay's staff. He's a former quarterback at the University of Illinois. He has gotten attention as a potential offensive coordinator in college. And like I said, with other NFL teams as well. And he has coached multiple positions. When he was at Iowa State as a coach there, he coached receivers, running backs, quarterbacks. He's been all over the place before eventually becoming an offensive coordinator there. Now he is once again back with Sean McVay. I think he will become an offensive coordinator next year in that cycle. But Sean McVay spoke about him after he returned this offseason, had some glowing remarks about him. He said, this is what Sean McVay said, I quote, "He's a stud. I think this guy's a special coach. I'm not going to take for granted the time that I have with him." I thought it was pretty cool that he chose to stay with us despite the other opportunities that he had. He is a rising star without a doubt. So that is Sean McVay, one of the brightest coaches in the NFL, talking about Nathan. He's somebody who will become an offensive coordinator in this league very, very soon. And then last two names here. Patrick Toney is the DB's coach in Arizona. He's just 35 years old. We mentioned Nick Rallis before, the defensive coordinator, who's only 32 years old. Patrick Toney at age 35 is the oldest coach on that defensive staff. It's a very, very young staff in Arizona, but those DBs in Arizona is probably the strength of the defense, with guys like Budda Baker and Max Melton and Jalen Thompson and Will Johnson coming in. And the name to watch this year, Garrett Williams. He's going to become a stud on that defense. Patrick Toney's been working very closely with all these DBs, obviously, for a number of years now. He came in on the staff with Jonathan Gannon when he was hired. This is somebody as well who I think, if Arizona has the year that I think they will have, Patrick Toney is a name to watch as a future riser in coaching circles. The last name I'll give here, I always like having a quality control guy. Quality control, for people who don't know, literally just does everything that he's asked for. And when it comes to an NFL organization, that's really what your job is. That's kind of getting your foot in the door, being a quality control guy. DeMeco Ryans, the 49ers, the Texans head coach, he was once upon a time a quality control guy. That's how you start in the NFL. I'm going to mention this name over here. The Raiders offensive quality control coach, his name is Connor McQueen. He was a former quarterback at Texas A&M himself. He was the quarterback's coach and offensive coordinator at Incarnate Word the last couple of years. Chip Kelly, Pete Carroll, they wanted to bring him onto this staff. You know what I think about this offense this year in Las Vegas. I think it could be sneaky fun. Connor McQueen, the entire week, he's going to be the guy who's helping them get to where they want to, with Geno Smith and Brock Bowers and Ashton Genty and Jacoby Myers and the rest of that offense in Las Vegas. We named about 30 guys over here. There's other people here that I didn't even mention. I think Michael Hutchins, the Vikings safeties coach, it's another guy. I didn't bring him up, but he works very closely with Durante Jones, the DB's coach, who also will become a defensive coordinator in this league one day. Josh Metellus was on the show previously, speaks very highly of Michael Hutchins. So there are a lot of coaches in this league who are under 40, rising stars, will continue to elevate. And like we've said here on the show, we've interviewed many coaches over the last year and a half on NFL Spotlight. You don't get into coaching for the money. You don't do that. You do it because you love teaching, you love coaching, you love being around the players, you like to see people's development. All these guys have that. And these are all young guys and guys who, again, will have elevated positions here in the next year plus around the NFL. I love doing this list every single year. I love seeing it actually come to fruition with these guys, where I put them back when they were position coaches, back when they were quality control guys, and eventually they make their rise and get to where they are. So it's always awesome every single year to do it. That is my list this year. We did guys on the offensive side, the defensive side, the coordinators, the position coaches, you name it. We did it over here. And these are some names to watch. Some you know, some you don't. But if I were you, if you're a diehard NFL fan, get to know the name early, because they will become names here in the future.
Ari, I don't know how you kept all of that together and how you went through all of these guys, but it's amazing. I genuinely hope people understand and appreciate the hard work you put into these lists, because quite frankly, these are some of the most intensive lists and explainers on these guys that you'll find anywhere else. I mean, Heck, a lot of our spotlight guests, when you Google their names, they're not anywhere to be found except for interviews that are very few far in between. So getting to know these guys now gets you a little bit of a step of ahead at the water cooler talk. And quite frankly, it, helps us shine a little bit of a spotlight because we know our executive listeners that are in here. Just take a look at these guys. They're pretty impressive guys. I'm really grateful that you always do this. And yeah, really, really good job.
I appreciate that, Ben. And you're right. We have a lot of people within NFL front offices and presidents and maybe even owners who come through and listen to this because I feel bad for some of these guys, but they don't get the attention they deserve, and they put in a lot of work. And being a coach is not easy. Like if people think it's fun, you get to be around players and whatever. Like it is a job. You must be committed. Like there's not much family time. There's a lot of late nights in the office. You really want to game plan and get everything right, get your players locked in, make sure everyone's on the same page. And these guys, who some of them you might not know, like they are guys who are risers in the NFL who do a really good job. And this is not a list that I put together where I don't know, I make one or two phone calls and this is the list. Like there's a lot of work that's put into it where it's like, who are these people? What makes them so special? And so on and so on. And we've had a bunch of coaches here on the show previously as guests. It's impossible to get everybody, as you know, Ben. Sometimes teams block guys from coming out for whatever reason. So if we're able to put a little bit of a spotlight on them by doing it like this, I'm all in on it because these are guys who deserve some recognition. And we're going to keep on doing this, Ben. We'll do it during the season. We do our head coaches list, head coach candidates list. We do our GM candidates list. We'll do more stuff centered around the coaching cycle and the GM cycle and other executive stuff and coordinator stuff. Like this is a topic that in the national media, in the local media, whatever it is, some of these guys don't get talked about enough. And we're going to do that right over here on NFL Spotlight. We're all about spotlighting great people around the NFL. And that is what we're doing here with this list. So that will do it here for our Wednesday, September 3 edition of the NFL Spotlight Show. We will be back here tomorrow for the first game of the year, Thursday, September 4. I'm getting excited just talking about it over here. Eagles and Cowboys.
You can see it. You can see it. It's coming out now, Ari.
It's here. We've been talking about other stuff since February. Like finally, we have real football coming up over the air. Tomorrow will officially be game day, kickoff day. It is here, and we will see everyone here tomorrow morning.